Good evening. Those of you who are not familiar with this speaker, my name is Menahem Ben-Sasson. I'm the president of the Hebrew University. But I have to admit that beforehand I was one of the regular soldiers of ציפי Livni. I cannot say Mrs. Livni. I can say my leader, which is true. But if I say something more than just ציפי Livni, I lose the straightforward attitude of her to any topic. The way that she approaches topics, the candid way that she tackled political issues in Israel, and we are still thankful for this example, even though some mourn and sorry about the fact that they think that she had to pay more for things that a leader should not pay. And in this case, in these days, we are thankful that she found the time, and it is a hectic time, to come to share with us her ideas at the end of this important conference. It is an international conference about the Middle East. You stayed, you were kind and stayed until this moment in order to hear those who did it and those who will do it, hopefully. And at the moment, opposition is also a mission. As Leader Livni knows, and she is going to share with us her views, and then in order to make this conference end in a proper way, I think that I'm not going to take the responsibility of giving my notes. If some of you want to ask a question or two, we'll take it, but we'll conclude the conference with Leader Livni's view. Thank you very much, ציפי Livni.
Thank you. Thank you, Menachem. As I said before, we miss you. I miss you. You were not a soldier. You're one of Kadima's leader. We miss you there in the parliament. There's a lot to do, but I know that I'm familiar with your contribution to the Hebrew University, so I'm here just to share with you my views. And it is true that the opposition is a mission as well, but a temporary job, I hope. So I know that this is a conference about the Middle East, which is a tough neighborhood, never a dull moment, hectic days in the Middle East. This is basically the way we live. And I'm sure that you discussed the trends in the region and the fact that our region now is being divided between extremists and moderates. Extremism means extreme religious ideology led by Iran, Hezbollah, its proxy in Lebanon, Hamas in the Palestinian Authority. All these, whether it's a state or organization, represent extreme religious ideology, which is, in a way, it's a conflict which is unsolvable because they are not fighting for their own rights. There is no conflict between Israel and Iran, not on borders, not on anything. The Iranian ideology against Israel is not because, or is not the outcome of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, because let's imagine, like the Beatles said, that we end the conflict the next day. Iran is not going to change its ideology. So basically, religious conflict like these are unsolvable. And Hamas as well, in the Palestinian Authority, they doesn't represent the national aspiration of the Palestinians for a state of their own, which is a legitimate aspiration, and I believe that it is solvable, but they represent, or they are fighting in order to deprive us from our rights. So since we face this division in the region, well, it's not enough to understand that this is the neighborhood, but what needs to be done in order to implement the vision of the State of Israel, or the ultimate goal of the State of Israel. And the ultimate goal of the State of Israel is to keep Israel as homeland for the Jewish people and a democratic state, when these two values are living together and not in contradiction, a secure state, hopefully living in peace in the land of Israel. So basically I'm talking about the Israeli interest and the ultimate goal of the State of Israel, and it is about the State of Israel being Jewish and democratic state. But we need to understand that in order to have these values Jewish and democratic state living together or living in harmony, we need to do something which is very difficult for any Israeli. And this is to have a Jewish democratic state, secured state in the land of Israel, but not on the entire land. And I believe in the rights of the Jewish people on the entire land, historical, biblical, judicial, whatever. But since there's a need for a Jewish majority, and since we need to choose the Israeli leadership between two completely different options and completely different visions. One is Israel, Jewish democratic state, and the other is having Jews living on the entire land, but it means that equal voting rights for everybody, and the meaning is to lose the nature of the state of Israel as a homeland for the Jewish people. So for me, the idea of two states for two peoples, it's not a favor to the Palestinians, not even to the President of the United States of America, but it represents basically the basic Israeli interest. This is the only way to implement the vision of Israel and the ultimate goal of the state of Israel, which is basically Zionism. So, but a vision is not enough, and realities on the ground are tough. And there are all the excuses for those who doesn't want to end the conflict, because on one hand we have Hamas controlling Gaza Strip, we have the legitimate Palestinian government and Abu Mazen as president, but they don't control Gaza Strip, they are too weak. And I know that vast majority of Israelis believe in the need to end the conflict according to the vision of two states for two peoples, but there is lack of hope or lack of trust that it is possible. And since I'm realistic enough to see realities on the ground, I believe that we need to continue the policy of the foreign government, which was adapted to the situation or accepted according to the situation on the ground. And it means that we need to act in a dual strategy. On one hand, Hamas is not a partner for peace, not because I want to punish them for using terror against Israel, but because there is no hope with them, not for Israel, nor for the Palestinians. Because, as I said before, they are not willing for 3 years now to say that Israel has the right to exist. So there is no hope with them to end the conflict. And since this is a terrorist organization, when it comes to terror, there is no just cause for terror. Terror is terror is terror, and against terror there is a need to fight. And this is the reason why I believe that the operation in Gaza, that was decided a year ago, was needed, especially after Israel withdrew from Gaza Strip. We dismantled all the settlements. We pull out our forces from Gaza Strip to open a new vision of peace. What we got instead was terror, Hamas controlling Gaza Strip, and against them we need to act in military means. And it's not enough because, as I said, it's a dual strategy and we have two sides of the same equation. And the other side means to end the conflict or to make all the efforts in order to end the conflict with the more pragmatic parts of, or with the national movement of the Palestinians. Because when we look at this conflict as a national conflict, it is solvable according to the vision of two states for two peoples. Now, I know that sometimes when we have a partner that maybe we can reach a peace treaty with, but is too weak and he cannot deliver, there is some, and rightly so, skepticism amongst the Israelis saying, what's the need for a piece of paper if they cannot deliver? So the idea is to reach a piece of paper, which is more than a piece of paper, which is a peace treaty, which is concrete enough, that defines the future borders of the state of Israel, that ends the conflict and give an answer to all the outstanding issues. And it is crucial for us to take this window of opportunity in order to end the conflict and to make it concrete so each leader can come to his own people, to her own people, and to say, this is the package. These are the future borders of the state of Israel, and the Palestinians can say, these are the future borders of the Palestinian state. We can say we take all the security measures in order to live in peace. It's not just to believe to the paper, but we took all the necessary steps in order to make all the security needs to be concrete. And this is the end of conflict. And then we should look at the situation on the ground. And since I'm not going to throw the keys to the other side of the border hoping that the good guys will grab it, but we need to make it clear, not only in the agreement, but also before the creation of the Palestinian state, that we have a responsible government, that they fight terrorism, that all the responsible steps were taken against terror, and the future Palestinian state is not going to be a terror state or a failed state, in a way like Lebanon, in which you have an armed militia, which is also a political partner to the government, and not an extreme Islamic state. And there's a need to do it now because, as going back to the beginning of my speech, is that since the trend that the region become more extreme and since religious conflict are unsolvable, we need to find a way to solve the conflict with the national movement in an understanding that the implementation, and it was agreed with the Palestinians, that the implementation is subject to the roadmap and other conditions that will be part of the agreement. So what's the use of this piece of paper? I believe that the only way to have or to give an answer to or to end the conflict, which gives an answer to the national aspiration of the Jewish people in a Jewish state and to the Palestinian in a state of their own, is by making an agreement that represents or which is the outcome of decisions by both sides. And when there is a stagnation and stalemate, we have the extremists or different ideas coming from different parts of the world, and it's less important for me whether it's in Arabic, in Swedish, in French, or even in English American. The idea is that we enter the negotiation room, relaunch the negotiations from where we stopped a year ago, and not just as a dialogue for a dialogue, not just to find out that there is no partner on the other side. And believe me, it's the easiest thing on earth to say or to discover that there is no partner, for us and for them. But to cut the deal. I am familiar with the nature of decisions which are needed. It's not going to be easy. But I believe that vast majority of Israelis understand that the choice is between two options. Unfortunately, in the Middle East, usually it's between bad options. But one is two states or two nation states, and the other is one state, and it means that it's not a Jewish state. And I am familiar with the price of decisions. I know that it's not going to be easy, and I voted for uprooting people in the disengagement plan. More than 70,000 people left their homes because of our decision. But since I knew then that in any agreement, Gaza Strip is not going to be part of Israel anyway, so what I'm doing is painful for them, but it's the right thing for the state of Israel, I believe that leaders can make these decisions, which are problematic, difficult, concessions that are difficult even to imagine, only if they can imagine what is the price of stagnation and the understanding that we are sitting in a way on a volcano, that the appearance of peace and quiet is something which can be something very temporary. And at the end of the day, we need to make this agreement not just when there is violence against Israel and there is a better understanding that there's a price for not having an agreement, but when it seems quiet, it is quiet because Israel regained deterrence after the military operation in Gaza, and because on the other side, I just heard today Abu Mazen saying that when he's in charge, there's not going to be a third intifada because they are responsible enough not to use terror because they believe in negotiations. So it's not enough to have these vague beliefs of negotiations or to want to enter the negotiations room. It's not enough to speak about two states for two nations. There's a need for leadership who knows what needs to be done, is willing to pay the political price in order to do so, in an understanding that the other options are options which are basically or can lead to the end of Zionism the way I understand it. Thank you.
Well, you skillfully put together the conference, Professor Amitai and Professor Podeh, with a question mark by Bernard Lewis. And it's not by chance that I think that ציפי Livni gave an answer. It has to do also with the session that you dedicated to the topic yesterday afternoon. Professor Lewis started the conference with a question: what next in the Middle East? And here you had an option, an answer, and the beginning of a discourse, putting framework into a continuation based on agreements done before, and the floor is open for few questions. Professor Amitai, speak up, please.
Yes, thank you very much for joining us. An area you didn't talk about was, thank you. An area that you didn't discuss, but it's also very important for us, is Israel's relations with Turkey. Could you give us your thoughts on the recent crisis between Israel and Turkey?
Yes. I'll take all the questions together and answer. Please.
Yes, Professor Podeh. Professor Podeh.
Okay, thank you. Again, I want to join Professor Amitai and thank you for coming and joining us here at the end of this conference. But I would like to combine with one we are doing here, which is mainly a history of the Middle East and also partly the prospects and what next in the Middle East, and to ask you, if we look generally at the behavior of previous Israeli governments, I wouldn't say a generalization, which is usually true. The Israeli government do not initiate any schemes for solving the problem or the conflict with the Palestinians or the Arab world in general. Most of the initiatives, historically speaking, came from either the United States, different third parties, and sometimes even the Arab countries, recently the Arab peace plan. So my question is, in the future, assuming in the future you are becoming the Israeli Prime Minister, are you going to initiate something which would be new in Israeli policy?
Professor Maud.
I want to be more specific. Everybody is very gentle. We discussed during the conference by passing various issues, and one was the Arab Peace Initiative. In fact, everybody mentioned it, but he, as I said, was hesitant, and I'm not. What is your position? Because, you know, it was put on the table in 2002, reconfirmed by the Arab 2007. Most or all Muslim countries supported it. And I don't know if I heard something from you about it. Certainly the government rejected it. When your foreign minister, Minister of Foreign Affairs, you didn't accept, maybe you had some good remarks, but wasn't officially. And I wonder why, for the first time in history, you have something, you don't have to accept it, but as a basis. And what is more important for me here, and here again you're a bit evasive, is Jerusalem. What you speak about two-state solution. What does it mean two-state? Does it include East Jerusalem for the Palestinians or not? Because it's very crucial, not only with the Palestinians, with the Arabs and the Muslims, 57 Muslim nations.
Okay, thanks. Okay, thank you. You know, I think that Professor Perez asked about something new. I would like to say that I'm saying basically the same, it's the same vision since I entered politics. Or my decision to enter politics was in 1995 in an understanding that we need to divide the land. I thought that Oslo Agreement was not the right way to do it, since it was just, in a way, a memorandum of understanding which postponed and delayed the answer to the core issues to the end of process. And I was thinking, well, I felt, you know, the Israeli society was divided between what was called the land of Israel, or those who loved the land of Israel, and on the other there was another camp, and it was the peace camp. And I felt that I'm in between. On one hand, I have the same love to the land of Israel, the same understanding that we have all the rights on the entire land, but on the other hand, there's a need to divide the land because the vision is the state. But then I had my other friends coming from the left wing. They put their best T-shirts with a glass of wine, waiting for the new Middle East to fall on our hands. And I said, listen, but this is just something which is vague, which is not concrete enough. And I was a lawyer by profession then, and I said that I wouldn't have given the client of mine the possibility to sell his second-hand apartment and to give the keys to one room without getting the full consideration and knowing what is going to be the price for the apartment. So I was there since the beginning, and in a way I feel that since we didn't solve the conflict, people are trying to, not to change the paradigm, but to find different ways to tackle it. And in a way I feel that I'm boring, you know, for a year, more than a year now, I'm speaking about the need to solve the conflict, about the need to find the way to end the conflict with the final status agreement. I am not in favor of partial agreements because I believe that this is the way of those who are not willing, or maybe they don't have the courage to end the conflict because of the understanding what are the decisions which are needed. So they find a way to say, okay, we'll make another step. This is something that we can live with, and let's postpone the other. At the end of the day, it doesn't serve the Israeli interest, because at the end of the day, and this relates to your question, the idea is two different states, that the creation of the Palestinian state is the answer to the aspiration of the Palestinians, the entire Palestinian people, including refugees. And this should be the basic understanding, which is the basic understanding or the base for the idea of two states for two peoples. There's a need to define the border, but I need to know what's going to be on the other side of the border in terms of security. They need to know what's going to be with the settlements, which are on the other side of the border, so it is all connected. And to have something temporary, or you can live here or do something here or have your own independent here, this can lead to a situation in which we have an ongoing conflict between two states on issues which are more sensitive, like the blocks of settlements, that I want them to be part of Israel because they are there and because most of the Israelis live there, on refugees or on Jerusalem. And I'm not going to have this negotiations here. As I said before, it's about leadership of two sides to enter the negotiations room and to do it themselves. I was the one that, well, I was the one. Since Oslo, Jerusalem is on the table as part of the core issues. It was accepted in Annapolis that we initiated. I will relate to it later. Since I was asked by one of the parties in Israel to say that I take Jerusalem off the table, and the meaning is to end the negotiations, I decided not to do so, even though it was their condition to support me to be the prime minister. And I felt that there is no use to be there if I cannot make the decisions which I believe are crucial for the future of the state of Israel. But I'm completely against the Swedish or the EU putting to us the solution for Jerusalem, saying this way or the other, because it's about both sides to decide in the negotiations room. And this is, of course, maybe the most sensitive issue for both sides. But talking about initiatives, I believe that when Israel is not initiating, well, there are third parties who put other ideas on the table. And basically, when it comes to third parties, I'm sure that they want the best for the Middle East, even the best for Israel, but it doesn't represent the real Israeli interest. It's just for us to understand what are the sensitivities, what need to be answered. And this is the reason that I believe in negotiations. Now, the roadmap that was an American initiative when there was a stagnation included the first phase in which Israel needed to free settlements, but the Palestinians needed to act against terrorism. And second phase was an option of a state with temporary borders, and then final status agreement. And we could have waited on the first phase of the roadmap forever. And since I believe then and now that time works against us, we decided, with the American and the Palestinians, to make another concept, which means that we are going to jump to the third phase of the roadmap and to initiate final status negotiations as long as the implementation is going to be subject to the roadmap in terms of the situation on the ground. So I believe that we need to initiate, but as I said before, I believe that we don't need to change the rules of the negotiations. It was agreed that it's going to be concrete agreement, final status agreement, not partial, not principles. It was discrete. We built trust between both sides, and we didn't reach a dead end. So we need to continue, as long as there are in both sides leaders who are willing to make the decisions and not just, to meet in the negotiations room, because we passed the times in which an Israeli and Palestinian meeting in negotiations room was the headlines. We are not there anymore. Now it's time for decisions. And talking about the Arab Peace Initiative, at first it was Tom Friedman's initiative, I think, in New York Times. It was 2002. I was a minister in Sharon's government. And I heard at first when it was published by Tom Friedman, it was 2 states basically, 67 borders, Jerusalem, the capital of the future Palestinian state, and normalization between Israel and the entire Arab world when peace comes. And I was interviewed and I said, well, this is good news because basically it accepts the idea. It speaks about the entire Arab world making peace with Israel. I am not willing to, I hope that it's not take it or leave it because I need to negotiate the borders and Jerusalem as well. But in a way, it changes the nature of the conflict to a national conflict on borders and so. But then in Beirut, if you recall, they added some articles relating to the refugees, not to absorb them in the places in which they are, and to have a just solution. And I thought that this is something that make it more, which is not according to the vision of 2 states, the way I understand it. But yet, when I was Minister of Foreign Affairs, I met the representatives of the Arab League, which unfortunately these were the only representatives, or the only states that we have peace treaty with, I mean Egypt and Jordan. But they were nominated to be the representative of the Arab League on the Arab Peace Initiative. And I said, okay, welcome. Now, are you willing to negotiate with us the future agreement between Israel and the Palestinians on behalf of the Palestinians? Do you have a power of attorney from the Palestinians to end the conflict? And I said, no, of course not. The Palestinians need to negotiate it. And I said, okay, another question. Is it take it or leave it? I mean, is Israel need to say, yes, we take it? Because if this is the situation, we need to say no. So basically what I said when I was the Israeli foreign minister, I said that there are some good news there. I mean, talking about ending the conflict in means of peace and not in violence, and the idea of normalization with Israel is great. And basically, the idea of making peace between Israel and the Palestinians is a good idea, but we need to negotiate. So at the end of the day, the Arab Peace Initiative is not a replacement for a bilateral negotiations. And they accepted this. And then I said to them, but listen, now I expect you to do something. Normalization with Israel at the end of the process is nice, but it's not enough for me. Because I want to make peace with the Palestinians because it's crucial for me. Not because I want to have peace with other, 50 Muslim states that were mentioned there, or 20-something Arab states. This is a bonus. I need this peace treaty with the Palestinians. Now help the Palestinians to make the decisions, because there is no Palestinian leader who can make the peace treaty with Israel without the support of the Arab world. So instead of sitting on the fence and waiting for both sides to make an agreement, support the Palestinians in any decision, in any compromise, in any agreement that they make with Israel. And more than that, let's have what I call normalization in stages. When Israel takes the right steps toward the Palestinians, I want the Palestinians and the Israelis to understand that peace is not just a vague idea, it's not something that it's not realistic. And and for now they see the pictures of Olmert and Abu Mazen, Abu Ala and myself, but in Israel I want them to see other pictures of me or Olmert or any Israeli leader with other Arab leaders, with Saudis, with Gulf states, with others, with states, with Morocco, Tunisia, states that we don't have diplomatic relations. And I can understand the linkage that you, the Arab League, do with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So do it only when Israel makes the right steps in terms of settlements, prisoners, whatever, economy with the Palestinians. And it is not less important for the Palestinians. Because, and especially the radical elements in your places, because for the Palestinians it's very difficult to make the decisions because they can be accused by Hamas, by others, that they are not working according to the Arab narrative, that they are traitors and so on. So the young generation in Gulf states and other places, they need to see some steps, because if not, when peace comes, hopefully, for them it's going to be, wow, we maybe the compromise is something that we cannot afford. They need to see something which is else. But and this was the reason why it was very important for us to invite, well, for the Americans, but to invite the entire Arab world to Annapolis to launch the negotiations. And the fact that the Saudi foreign minister was there was very important. Was very important for the Palestinians and the Arab world. And this is the reason that, since Hamas is there anyway, and it's not going to change for now, I hope that when we reach a peace treaty and the entire Arab world is going to support it, now the choice for Hamas becomes more difficult, because it's not only them against the weak, legitimate Palestinian government, but it's them against the entire Arab world. So this is needed. And talking about Arab world and your questions about Turkey, well, I think that different things happen simultaneously. Well, I believe that the relations with Turkey are of utmost importance, strategic importance for the state of Israel. I hope that this is also the way the Turkish sees it. Now, few things happen simultaneously. One is that in a world in which everybody needs to take position or to take side, in a way, the Turks were something in between. I mean, when it was clear that it's a zero-sum game between Fatah and Hamas represent something which is against the national aspiration of the Palestinians, the Turks were the first that invited Hamas after the elections in the Palestinian Authority. And I think that they saw their role as mediating between different parts of the world, the West and the Arab world and Israel and others, including Syria. And then I think that all this happened simultaneously. One, the negotiations with Syria stopped, and they feel that this is something that affects their positions as mediators. Operation in Gaza Strip started a few days after the visit of Prime Minister Olmert in Ankara, and they feel that this is something that affects them. Plus public opinion, which is, we are talking about also Islamic party, but also public opinion, which is basically against Israel. Plus maybe we can add to this an understanding that the EU part, or being part of the EU, is not going to be that easy. And so I think that they found themselves in a situation in which they feel that they can play a very important role in this region. And I know that only a few weeks ago they offered to the United States to be also the mediators between the United States and Iran. So I think that they want to be the mediators in between a democratic state but an Islamic state that can be in relations with everybody and not to take one side and to act accordingly. I feel that it is crucially important for us to to enhance the relations, to go back to the place in which they understood that this is their own interest, not only the Israeli interest to have the decisions. It relates also to their ties and relations with the United States of America. So I think that the best thing to do is basically not to make statements about future mediation between Israel and Syria, but to work together in order to enhance the relations and to go back to normality. Okay, thanks.
I want to thank you very much. I want to thank you very much for waiting in patience. If I'm the one to conclude this conference, I ask your permission to thank those who organized it. I mentioned it already skillfully and very much of new points of view, ideas. You covered not only the Middle East, but the world in a way. The globe has got a different point of view at the end of this conference. And even in this very short session, we studied a lot about the current point of view of an Israeli politician and a leader, those who did and those who will do, in a responsibility of looking globally and not only in a narrow-minded way. Thank you very much, ציפי. Thank you very much.